I saw something yesterday on Twitter. It was this woman. She said, I'm going to ask my AI, and then you ask your AI, is Donald Trump a dictator? And it was interesting because I don't know what AI persona or program she was using, but the voice said, no, because dictators silence dissent. I'm sure you've heard that before. I have too. He has not silenced dissent. Yes, he has sued media outlets. What we need to realize is that journalists have sacred trust that the public has invested in them. A lot of things like this cause us to be divided because my fellow journalists, even local ones, this is how they were raised or educated. Journalists are always right. Their integrity is impeccable and unimpeachable. If there's a clash between, government and a journalist or business and a journalist, many people I know would just always side with the journalist. Well, the thing is, though, our standards have become so loose and lax that so many things that are untrue get printed. So many things distorted, untrue, people's opinion masquerading as fact. And then, of course, we have the great spin of omission, a term which I have coined, which in every major issue, including the gun issue, is the spin of omission, is the thing that is keeping people divided. Example, why is it that every mass shooter, almost every mass shooter to a person, was able to buy a gun legally? Is it because A, we don't have good laws, or B, the reporting system is incomplete? Well, it's B. The reporting system is extremely incomplete. The local jurisdictions, especially schools and mental health facilities, do not talk to law enforcement at both local level and on up the chain. When they pass a background check, it is an instant background check. It's called the National Instant Background Check System. There's a building in West Virginia run by the FBI that is dedicated to this. But states report to this database, and it's basically voluntary in that there's not enough resources apparently to devote somebody, or more than one person full time to getting this information over in real time, which means to me, I think that the system is probably woefully outdated. The second reason why the National Instant Background Check System database is incomplete is because of the mental health aspect. There are HIPAA laws, and so there's a big controversy over whether somebody's mental health visitations should be part of that record, as far as whether someone can have the right to bear arms, not be violated under any circumstances, right? They can do whatever they want. And then another spin of omission is law-abiding gun owners. Sure, anytime somebody has a gun accident, accidentally shoots someone, it's huge news. And so I, for one, was thinking that these accidents happen all the time, but the fact is they're extremely rare. The NRA does gun safety training, and law-abiding gun owners are not the problem. That is why the issue of, quote, sensible gun legislation is silly, because our current laws are not being enforced. Another way that I was able to figure this out, to wrap my head around it, is, wait a minute, the guns that are killing people are being used by criminals, right? By definition, because they're killing people, right? And I thought to myself, wow, you're always hearing about possession of a firearm, like people have a rap sheet or whatever. And it's quite common for possession of a firearm to be in the mix, and yet, do we really hear about a big push toward disarming criminals? No. Well, you might laugh at that, right? So you may laugh at that, but think about it. This segues very, very neatly into crime itself. The law-abiding gun owners are not the target, because by definition they are law-abiding, right? Now, how do you tell if somebody's going to be law-abiding? Well, you don't. But the vast majority of gun owners, especially NRA members, have to participate in safety courses and training. And they are comfortable around guns because they know how to handle them. Well, that is becoming more and more rare, and these gun accidents that get put on massive, blast, national news aren't helping. So that we've got, a lot of people, especially people on the left, who are terrified of guns. Now, I know that there are some people on the left who are maybe former gun owners or current gun owners, like Biden. They keep a shotgun. They keep a shotgun at the house, at the old homestead in the forest, and then they're ready to go out and raise some hell if anybody should try to come and bother them, right? But what I'm talking about is a fear of guns because there's no training, there's no comfortability around them, and when, if you think about it, given everything that's happened, being able to defend yourself is very important. What if you had no way to defend yourself? There's a movement of black 2A supporters, black gun owners. There's one guy named Colion Noir, I think, Colion Noir. He's an influencer, and, it's not just him, but think about it. There are areas of every city that are unsafe, especially if you're a middle-class white person, right? They're unsafe. You've learned that your whole life. But for some reason, you don't make the connection that this high crime doesn't have to be that way, right? You just think that that's the way it is. And when anybody brings up, well, what about, black lives in the inner cities getting killed by other black people or other white people or any race of people, then the person listening will respond with, that's racist. And even I used to think that. But that's not it. It is literally someone who's thought about it and said, well, if you're concerned about black lives, shouldn't you be doing more about crime? Now, the Democrats have always said, crime is down. Crime has been down for decades. Now, I even said that. Crime was really high in the early 90s. We didn't realize it until it started going down, which is good, right? In general. The key is looking at neighborhood by neighborhood, okay? It is not down in certain neighborhoods. That's the key to understanding it. And even if it is a little bit down, what kind of baseline are we talking about that would be acceptable as far as violent crime? Now, we've had some high-profile, terrible murders in Los Angeles. Since the pandemic, there was one interior design student who was working alone at like a textile, not a restoration hardware, but something like that for interior design. And she was only not supposed to work alone. And she lived in Pacific Palisades. Now, it was big news, but I remember that she lived in my neighborhood. Sadly, so there weren't enough people to work. And so she was working alone, even though that they were always supposed to have two people, given where it was. I think it was on La Cienega, not that anyone cares. Californians. A homeless man came in, and she texted her friend, I don't like this guy that just came in, how he looks, And he was kind of like menacing and staring at her, and he killed her. He stabbed her to death in the shop, and there was nobody there to help. And it was really, really tragic. So we have had a lot of high-profile attacks that were unprecedented, and every life matters. So when someone says they're concerned about the black people that get murdered in Chicago, which I've covered before in my lifetime, they're not being racist. They are actually telling you that they are the opposite of racist, that they are saying, well, if this is the case, then we need to do something about it. And sensible gun legislation will do absolutely nothing because we already have laws. It's just that the database is not complete, and we can't even agree on what information to have in there. It's really sad. It's really sad. I feel like we can walk and talk and chew gum at the same time. But that's not the solution to crime. Police forces are underfunded. Hello? Who would want to be a police officer right now? We've had a rash of shootings and killings of officers by often, almost always, parolees and those on probation, and I would say both in the country, both who are citizens, legal permanent residents, and those who enter the country illegally. But we've had a rash of those killing police officers. Who would want to join the police force now? And I remember when I started to change my mind on this stuff, there were about 5 or 6 officers in Texas who were ambushed. I remember that funeral. That funeral was where George W. Bush was there, and so was Obama. He was president then. This was in 2016, I believe. And you remember that footage of Bush and Michelle Obama holding hands, and he was dancing, and they were dancing to Battle Hymn of the Republic. And I just remember watching it going, yeah, but like, this thing that happened, that was at their funeral. That was at the funeral of the 5 or 6 police officers who had been ambushed and killed. And I thought, in my day, when I was little, killing a cop was, I mean, there is a massive, massive taboo, you know, like, they do not, obviously they don't like it, but it was more rare because it was just like, no, you know, you're not going to do that. But it has become a lot more common. So why would you want to join the police force with that? Also, their hands are tied by these prosecutors that came in 2020 and 2022. And there is a direct connection to George Soros, who funded the PAC, Political Action Committee, that then got a lot of these prosecutors elected, who were just letting out violent criminals with no cash bail, meaning they bailed them out without having to pay. If we want to help indigent or poor people who get accused of a crime, we should provide better public defenders. We should completely overhaul that program. No cash bail is absolutely brain dead because you're letting a violent criminal out on their own recognizance. What? You know, and none of that ever made sense. So, but it's pretty obvious that the guns are everywhere. They're not trying to get the guns out of the criminals' hands. They're trying to get the guns out of law-abiding citizens' hands. And these mass shootings are, the way I look at them, is they're anomalous. They're an anomaly, and there's a very sinister reason for them, and it has not completely come out. I'm not going to show my entire poker hand with that, but it is a very sinister phenomenon, but it is almost like separate from the issue of law-abiding gun owners versus criminals. You understand? You got these young people who have started, it's almost copycat at this point. It's sick, and everybody talks about SSRIs and, you know, how that affects them. If they stop SSRIs, or, you know, they can't get prescription, that's very bad. There's a lot involved with their mental health and how we are raising our kids, how the news gets disseminated, and the impression that the public has of many different things, and the trans issue. So the whole thing now has gotten pretty ridiculous. I'd say we've jumped the shark. You know how they say that about a TV show? When they have an episode that is so preposterous, they say they've jumped the shark. Well, we jumped the shark in our society. If you have a friend who's on the left who says crime is down, that is a red flag for them being out of touch. Yes, they're out of touch. They need to get more friends. They need to branch out and talk to more people who live in these violent areas. Remember that Sequoia 9-year-old girl who was killed at that Wendy's during the Black Lives Matter protest? She was a bystander in Atlanta. Like, it just never ends. The worst thing we could have done was defund the police. And in the frenzy of the mob, the opinion of the mob, how is it that the defunding actually happened? And it's like with the fire department in LA, their budget was woefully lacking. And where is all this money? So there's a lot to unpack here. I've missed all of you very much. Please comment below, and if you haven't yet followed the page, or if you have followed it, check to make sure you're still following, and please follow and like the video and share. Just look for my content on Substack, Back to Facts. I have a website, back2facts, the number 2.com, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I'm on X, yeah. Above all, keep calm and share complete facts. Bye-bye.